Today we are going to be going over a handful of simple moves that you can use to start improving your golf game today, tackling the bigger issues of hip and thoracic mobility. Hopefully by the end of this, you will have a better understanding of how to strengthen these patterns and their importance for performance. First move is one we've gone over before recently, so if you want to check out that video for progressions, you can. And it's just going to be our 90-90 hip stretch. So do this one dynamically for 30 to 45 seconds, so you can do it for a few sets. And we're really thinking about starting with one leg internally rotated, the other one externally rotated. As you progress in this movement, we can go ahead and get a little bit more upright in terms of our posture, but starting out with your hands is perfectly acceptable. As you see here, I'm progressing to no hands being on the ground, and we really want to feel like we're getting our knees as far away from each other when we go through that transition phase. That'll really make sure we're even getting a little bit of an inner hip stretch as we go through this. Driving the heels into the ground, trying to keep them in a very consistent spot. The body is made up of a mobile and stable joint system, hips and thoracic spine being mobile, lumbar spine, and knees being our stable joints. Essentially meaning that if there is a limitation in the mobile joint, a stable joint may end up being compromised because of this deficiency. Next thing here is going to be tackling that thoracic rotation. In this variation of this open book, we're going to go ahead and drive our knees up, which is going to help lock that lower back in place so that stable joint not moving as much. And that is really going to help us be able to use this thoracic spine a bit better here. So we're thinking about opening up that chest, not doing too much of the reaching with the arm, which sometimes I see where people just kind of try to get that arm to the ground by reaching more around their shoulder. And then we're really keeping those knees together, locked, pinned to the floor. We can hold them down with that hand, which is going to be ideal for us getting really open with that chest and making sure that thoracic spine's moving appropriately. You may even feel a bit of a stretch in your obliques as we're opening up here. One variation that you can incorporate is having the leg straight up and across. This is just going to add a little bit of a stretch to that medial hamstring and those adductors on the inside of the leg. And again, big important thing here is really making sure all that movement's coming from the chest, not just reaching for the ground with your arm. Just kind of defeats the purpose. Next move here, we're going to have a side plank clam. So we're going to have the band above the knees. We're going to have our legs bent. We're going to be pushing through that bottom knee, stabilizing with that bottom hip, and then externally rotating that top leg and feeling like we keep those heels together as we create that external rotation. This move is going to mimic our transition from top of the backswing into our downswing, where the trail leg is still stabilizing and the front leg is starting to externally rotate to create separation between those hips. I like to keep this one very golf specific by resetting the tension after every rep, so combining stabilization, external rotation, so a bit of that same sequencing factor. Next is going to be a dead bug, and we're going to have a block, so either a yoga block or a half foam roller in between the elbow and the knee on the same side, and this is going to make it unilateral. And the reason why we're doing this for golf specifically is because during golf we're going to have one side that's staying fairly contracted in terms of relationship of our rib cage to our pelvis, while the other side is expanding. And big keys here is we're going to think about that low back being flat against the ground. That means our pelvis is going to have good stability, so it's not moving around too much. We're not getting extension in that lumbar spine, and going into a good extension overhead, really feeling like you're kicking that heel away. One kind of key is making sure the knees are relatively close together. Sometimes people will do this where they drive the knee too far out to the side, and that just circumvents our core. Last move here is going to be a split stance thoracic rotation move. So we're going to have a little bit more of that weight over one leg first, other one's back up onto its toe. We're going to keep that core nice and engaged, and then from there we're going to go ahead and open up our spine, so that thoracic rotation from earlier. And if we're doing this correctly, we should feel a stretch on that outside part of the hip. We're thinking about opening up perpendicular to our current spine angle to facilitate that stretch or that barrier that we're winding up against in that lateral part of the hip. From a front profile, we're really going to feel like there's good pressure on the inside of our foot and that we're winding up. We're not letting that hip move too laterally to the side. So just like earlier, we want to make sure we're not just reaching with that shoulder and that arm. We're making sure all that rotation is coming from our thoracic spine, which is going to make us load that hip, almost corkscrewing ourselves on the ground. If we get too level, we're not going to feel that stretch. Or if we kind of tilt our spine forward, which a lot of people do, we're also not going to feel that stretch in that lateral part of the hip. Turning perpendicular to our spine angle that we've set up at address is essential for loading properly in our golf swing. I cannot emphasize enough how bad it is to have this spine tilt here. We're not really turning in our posture, but we're just kind of adding flexion to our spine. You're gonna end up standing up through impact if you do this, and this is something I see that is the most common amongst people that are trying to facilitate a false turn. Feel free to subscribe for a part 2 video, and thanks for watching.